We are here. Hold on a second. I think we got a little fuzz in the camera. Okay. So, I'm doing this live just to make a couple of quick announcements about stuff that we've got going on at Shield and Shield adjacent activities. Some stuff that we have coming up, so on and so forth. And then, of course, as usual, the regular Q&A, stuff like that. I haven't done my weekly live. I'm going to try to be more regular with the lives. And I'm told I should be doing that, so I'm going to try and do it. And yeah, so that's what we're going to do. I'll just wait for people to jump on here, because I know this one was a little bit last minute. I'm always Mr. Last Minute with the lives. I don't plan too far in advance because I don't like feeling like I have to do them. But Arizona in the house, Australia in the house. In case you guys can't tell, I am not in Canada at the moment, which is not a bad thing. Trust me on that. Texas, Melbourne, Ontario. It's always cool to see all the people from all over the place basically on here. Always nice to see the spectrum of localities that check into these lives. Cool to see that many people are interested in dog training. Let me just settle down here. Ooh, had to get out of the wind there. It was a lot of wind. We got Greece, Mexico, Wisconsin, Tasmania. Wow, you Aussies are really starting to come out. I guess maybe if you're in Tasmania, you're not an Aussie. We got Ian from the UK. How's it going, Ian? AKA Mr. Wolf Dog. How's it going with you? Ian's one of our longtime Elite Off Leash members. So, always happy to hear from him and see him. Let me just set this up, guys. I was a little bit late getting back, so there we go. I am unprepared. Got to be relaxed for these things. We usually end up talking for about an hour and a half. Whoa, 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 whoa. Okay, so let's get down to business. Montreal. I'll be in Montreal soon. Well, not Montreal. I will be. I will actually be in. Sorry, guys. I know the camera's moving around a lot. I'm just trying to get this thing stabilized so I can stop holding on to it here. Okay. Yeah. So, upcoming stuff that we've got going on. Well, we got the Ottawa Pet Expo, June 7th to 9th, I believe. So we're going to be doing a few live shows at the Ottawa Pet Expo, and then Shield Canine Ottawa is going to have a booth there, so that's going to be cool. We are going to be competing at in May. We've got a couple of competitions. We've got the Quebec regionals and Ontario regionals. So I've booked both my dogs into the Quebec regionals. I've got Chico and Gage in the Quebec regionals. And then I also booked a fail-safe spot in the Ontario regionals in case I have to pull a dog from the Quebec regionals and I need to back up. So they're going to be, I believe, May 19th, 20th. So that's going to be the upcoming stuff that we've got going on. I will be in Europe very shortly. End of April, I'm going to be going to Europe, and I will be going on a buy trip to Europe for some green police dogs and also for some protection dogs. It's been a minute since I've been in Europe, so I will be going to Europe and obtaining some dogs and meeting some friends in the Netherlands, so it'll be nice to do that as well. And hopefully come back with a batch of some really cool dogs. I always love I always like being able to buy a batch of dogs, because unlike one or two dogs, you get a batch of dogs, you just got a whole bunch of fun. You know, it's not just like one or two dogs. It's like you got 5 or 6 dogs now that you get to play with. And it's, again, when you're a connoisseur of these kind of dogs, it's like a car guy. It's like a car guy. You get all of a sudden like 4 or 5 supercars you get to play with. So that's what I'm looking forward to. That's going to be a lot of fun. So that's the immediate news. I have a couple of other things, but I'll mention them later. Let's see here. The mic is a bit staticky, but there's probably not anything you can do to fix it. DDR lover in the house. Tell me, guys, if the sound is not good. I don't know. I'll try to fix it. I see a lot of questions kind of rolling in already. I wanted to mention, just jumping back to a previous topic that I talked about. Let's talk a little bit quickly about body language. I mean, the last time I talked about body language, I think it was my last YouTube live that I talked about body language and dog training, and some of the typical BS that you see surrounding that. Microphone is good enough, no biggie. I wonder why the mic wouldn't be good. I think it might be, I wonder if it's the internet. Sound isn't good. Man, that actually does outside. Okay, hold on, guys. Let me see if I can fix it. Now, how's that? Is that better? I got off the Wi-Fi. I'm on 5G, so maybe that's better. So, okay, good. I'm glad it's better. So anyways, getting back to body language, I didn't really get a chance to talk about it because the last time I talked about body language, I was talking about more about the types of people that point out body language in videos and the reason why they might be nitpicking body language. And I think that was, of course, important to talk about. But, let's talk about this. Let's talk about this, When it comes to body language, I always have this thing. If you have to be an expert, and I put expert in quotation marks, that, a regular person would look at the dog and not see the dog being upset, not see the dog being stressed or miserable. And they would say, well, yeah, that dog looks like a normal dog. But only if you're one of these experts, and I put experts in quotations for a reason, do you see that, of course, the dog is super stressed and the dog is super, worried. And of course, I'm being sarcastic when I say this. This is where, people try to mystify dog training. Only the experts can see things that, you can't see, and demystify it. Most reasonable people can look at a dog and say, yeah, that dog's in distress, or yeah, that dog is clearly happy. But of course, there's always those individuals that are unreasonable. They are illogical, they are emotional, and they are unreasonable, right? And those are not people that we should look to for guidance when it comes to anything, whether it's dog training or not, whatever their credentials might be. Someone who's, unreasonable, someone who's emotional excessively, someone who's illogical. This is not someone that is trustworthy. This is not someone you should look to for information on anything. Because these types of people are inherently always looking at dog behavior. They're always looking, whatever it is that we're talking about, they're always looking at it through that emotional lens, right? Everything is always, coming through that lens, through their own emotional bias, through their own kind of disordered mindset. And they project that onto you. And a lot of people kind of buy into that. And that's a significant mistake. Here's the other thing I didn't get a chance to talk about, because it really is actually a complex topic. And it goes beyond just saying, yeah, these people are nitpicking body language, because they're trying to use that to their own ends to promote their training, because they can't promote their training with actual videos of their training or actual training. They have to, of course, utilize, emotional arguments to try and guilt people into following their way. But it goes beyond that. Stress in dog training, as I've mentioned before, and I've done several videos on this, is not in and of itself a bad thing. Just like it's not stress in any learning process, be it human, or animal is it's a very natural part of the learning process, and it can be unproductive or it can be productive, right? Especially if you know what you're doing. But when you're in, let's say your dog goes into stress. Let's say you're training and your dog goes into stress. Your dog is having a bad moment. Your dog is having a difficulty. Your dog is going through a struggle. It helps when you've been there. It helps when you've been there before and you've seen the outcome. A lot of the dogs, like you guys see the after videos of, like we post, you know, I do a lot of process videos, but I also do a lot of after videos, right? I try to show you guys how the sausage is made, but let's face it, I also show a lot of sausage. Nice, beautiful, tasty sausage. The sausage that is ready to be eaten, you know, the sausage that makes you hungry, that makes you want to go out and get something. In case you guys aren't aware, I'm making an analogy, obviously, right? I'm showing you guys the finished product, right? Now, and just like any other dog trainer, but there are moments that every one of those dogs have gone through, right? Where there was stress, where there was confusion, where the dog was worried, where the dog was afraid, where the dog was concerned, maybe where the dog was resistant, where the dog was stubborn, right? It wasn't just, oh, look, he's so wonderfully well behaved and it's been so easy all the way through. No, of course, just like any learning process, there was difficulty, there was adversity that the dog had to come through. And that adversity created significantly more clarity in the dog than if the adversity hadn't been there in the first place. Adversity creates adversity in a measured and appropriate manner, targeting specific areas of behavior, right? Make fantastic results, right? But you have to have been there, right? There's a lot of dog trainers that they haven't been there and they don't know how to come through the adversity. They don't know how to guide the dog through the adversity to the Shangri-La, so to speak, in terms of the training. So the dog gets a little, you know, resistant, or the dog gets fearful or shuts down or whatever it is, right? And immediately people panic, get scared, you know, basically bail out. And that's exactly the wrong thing to do. And that is not what's going to make a stronger dog. And I'm not talking about stronger in terms of just, oh, you know, like physically strong. I'm talking about stronger mentally, right? Our job as trainers is not just to train dogs' behavior. It's to build mental resilience in these dogs. It's to build, especially the dogs that are fearful, the dogs that are stress cases, the dogs that are worried. Basically, what we're doing with those dogs, you know, people say, oh, that dog was so scared. Like, the quintessential video for this is my "Don't Buy Puppies Like This" video that I shot a few years ago with a German Shepherd. Right? And we shot it with this German Shepherd puppy. I was just spur of the moment. She came in for a board and train, and she was just a mess, right? So I just shot a video saying, like, hey, don't buy puppies like this. Like, this is not what a German Shepherd is supposed to be like. And, you know, and then I shot, of course, like a month later, we shot an after video with her showing where she was at. And, of course, it was a very different looking dog, just like the Great Dane video, just like the video of Arlo recent. These are more recent videos, and there's been countless other videos that we've shot over the years on YouTube. And people always say, how did you get that stressful, that stressed out, clearly terrified dog? You didn't have to be an expert in dog body language to say that that dog was terrified. This dog was terrified before any training occurred. It literally walked through the door, shivering, tail tucked up its rear end, you know, just unable to cope with the world, right? How do you get those dogs to the point where they can cope with the world, right? And a lot of people are always thinking like it's super secret squirrel training. It's like, you know, oh, you know, like they're using the cookies and they're giving the toy at this specific moment, and that's what's making. No, we're building mental and physical resilience. Right? That dog is in an unnatural state, right? Like even yes, the dog is genetically fearful. And we'll say, of course, that those dogs are genetically fearful. Those dogs are genetically nervous dogs. But that doesn't mean that they can't learn, even though they have maybe a default higher level of cortisol, and they're more easily, you know, triggered into stress, fear, avoidance, so on and so forth. Doesn't mean you can't teach them to come through that. Yeah, you're afraid. You got to learn to deal with it. Yes, you're prone to being easily startled. You're prone to being easily, you know, made nervous by different things, whether it's social stimuli, environmental stimuli. But you got to learn to deal with it, right? I'm not going to give you, there's no amount of cookies in the world you can give a dog to get them to deal with it in a more productive way, right? You have to bring the dog through the adversity. And I don't know why people are so resistant to this, because those dogs already live in a constant state of adversity. Their entire life is horrible, right? Like, imagine just being afraid of everything. Imagine coming out your door and just like always being worried something was legitimately going to hurt you or kill you. That is how these dogs live. And to me, it is inhumane and unacceptable to leave them in this state, right? And it is easy to begin to change that by showing the dog how to come through that adversity, right? How. And it's not like, oh, I did this or I did that. There's a whole compendium of things that we do with these dogs. Fundamentally, for those of you in my online training, I take them through the Elite Off Leash program, right? We take them through the Elite Off Leash program, and we do a lot of structured play with these dogs, and we build them. We just show them, Obviously, maybe the repetitions with these dogs are shorter. You can't do maybe as much as you could do in the beginning with like a happy, energetic lab or German Shepherd. These are dogs that you kind of go a little bit slower in the beginning. But think about it as, for those of you familiar with the process of exercising, of working out, right? If I had never worked out a day in my life and I said, look, I want to start working out, my body is not resilient. My body is very weak. Every muscle in my body, the tendons, everything, weak. Weak because I have never, I've never stressed my body appropriately, or I haven't stressed my body appropriately for any significant length of time. The exact same process needs to happen mentally with these dogs, right? They might not have a physical problem, but they do have a mental problem. They lack resilience mentally, right? So if I had never worked out, would you say, yeah, Has, go and do an hour and, hammer away, really do a super, super intense hard workout? No, you would say, go slow, go carefully, don't do too much, focus on your form instead of, your intensity and how heavy the weight is. Instead, focus on your form, do, not too many reps, not too many sets, and slowly build your body up over a period of time. Give your nervous system, give your adrenal system a chance to relax, recuperate, allow your muscles to heal. The first time you work like the first week of working out is going to be absolute hell. You're going to be in a ton of pain because your muscles have never been ripped like this before, and you're fundamentally ripping your muscles. You're tearing your muscles so that they can then repair themselves. In the process of repairing themselves, they become stronger. It is the same with dog training, right? When you get a dog that lacks resilience, that lacks, the natural mental faculties, and the nervous system to come through stress, to come through adversity in a productive way, you treat it like someone who's never worked out before, and you train them the exact same way. The muscles still need to be torn, right? The stress still needs to be gone through. Otherwise, no productive outcome will be accomplished, right? There's no easy way. Everybody's always looking for an easy way. They're looking for a magical pill, right? And they try to do the same with the dogs, right? Like, well, I don't want to actually do the hard work. Is there some easy thing? Is there some magical treat I can give this dog or whatever else, right? And just like with human beings, there is no easy way. You just do the work. But the work actually isn't that complicated. Just like I would say, working out's a lot harder than, taking a dog through that process, right? And it happens a lot faster. You see results with the dog a lot faster. So I just kind of wanted to use some analogies so that people can kind of understand. It's not rocket science. It's common sense, right? And a lot of the times, because look, we've become advanced as a society. We have obviously a lot of technology. But as with the human condition, the natural human predisposition, I think, is to assume superiority, right? We're so smart, we're so advanced, and then that leads us to always look for complicated answers instead of simple answers. That leads us to assume that people in the past, for instance, were significantly stupider than we are now, where in fact when you read the writings of the learned men of the past, you're like, dear God, with no internet, with no formal education, you were able to think this way. You were able to come up with these ideas. Like, when you actually, you're like, oh my God, we're no smart. If anything, we're probably a little bit stupider than these people were 5,000 years ago, right? And it's the same with dog training. People are addicted to the complicated solutions. People are always looking for the complicated solutions. The best dog trainers in the world simplify dog training, right? It's simple. It is so simple. You're like, what? That's it? There's no like secret magical tool. There's no magical technique. Like, that's all you do? Yeah. They just do the fundamentals really well, and they understand how dogs learn, think, and communicate. It is not complicated. The more complicated you have to be as a dog trainer, the less likely there is going to be success, right? Flag America says, force-free trainers generally look like weak people. They don't work out because they are scared of stress. That is very true. I mean, look, force-free training as an ideology, I'm not going to get into it on this live, but fundamentally, it is a ideology for those that lack fundamental observational skills. Look at nature. Is nature force-free? Right? Of course it's not. Have the animals, evolved and adapted to living in a force-free system and being successful? Of course not, right? No animal in this world, including human beings. And the more you try to force animals and people into unnatural states, the more they struggle, right? There is joy to be had in adversity. There is joy to be had in struggle, because without darkness, there can be no light. Without cold, there can be no hot, so on and so forth, right? We as human beings and animals, we're not designed to live in this state of constant pleasure and arousal at all times, right? That's the other thing, with body language. A lot of people aren't used to seeing a dog that isn't highly aroused, right? Like every time the dog goes out for a walk, the dog's pulling on the leash, the tail is scorpion, the dog's like constantly, looking in the environment for things to excite him, to self-satisfy constantly in the environment. He's looking to be aroused. He's looking to self-satisfy in the environment. This is not a dog that is traveling with or working with his handler. This is a dog that's out there for himself, right? He's not in a partnership situation. He is, he's basically treating the handler like they are, like a servant. All right, servant, take me down the street, or I'll take you down the street. But I'm going down the street because there's like 5 different smells that I have to check out. There's that dog over there that I have to bark at. And oh my God, there's a squirrel. Let me drag you for 30 feet while I try to chase him. Right? This is a dog that is self-satisfying. This is a dog that is in a constant state of arousal. This is not a dog that is engaged with the handler. And I'm not talking about active engagement, because this is, again, what a lot of people make a mistake of, right? They see dogs that are actively engaged, right? They see dogs that are actively engaged. And these are dogs that they're usually dogs that are bred a certain way, so it's easy, the border collies, your certain Malinois, stuff like this, right? Easy to engage these dogs and activate these dogs. And, if a lot of those different types can easily be engaged and stay active for long periods of time. But again, this is not actually a dog that's being a dog, right? You will never see me when I've said this 1,000 times, I'll say this again. You will never see me when I walk my dog in public with my dog focus healing next to me, because that's not why we're here. I'm here to go out with you. I'm enjoying being outside. I'm looking at the trees. I'm enjoying the sights and the sounds and the smells. I'm experiencing nature if we're in nature, or if we're in a more urban environment. I'm taking that in, and I expect you to do the same. You don't have to stare at me like a crackhead the entire time. Could I get Chico or Gage to focus heal with me for 20 minutes? Yes, I could. Would that be good for them mentally? No, it wouldn't, right? And you see a lot of trainers doing this, right? It's like, oh, look, my border collie's focus healing with me in public, and I'm popping him liver treats every so often to keep him engaged with me, or giving him his ball or whatever. This is obedience. That's not obedience. That's bullshit, right? That's not real. That's not what the average person on the street anyways is going to be able to accomplish with their dog, nor should they want to accomplish that with your dog. When you go out with your dog, that is a shared experience. I'm out enjoying nature. I'm out enjoying, the environment. And guess what? You are too. You're out here too. You're out here enjoying yourself too. It's a shared experience, right? I don't need you staring at me and engaging with me constantly. That is for the competition field, right? When we're competing, no problem. I expect you to give me your everything. I expect you to give me 110%. But when we're out for a walk, walk, my friend, walk. Whether you're walking next to me or whether you're loose, you're running around, you're smelling the bushes, you're doing what a dog should do. Just like human beings, dogs should spend an element of their life living a natural life, doing things that are natural to the canine, okay? Just like humans, right? There are things that you should be doing in your life, right? And yes, that involves adversity, right? Not just as part of the training. We know this. We know, I don't know why we don't do this for dogs, but we know that if we intentionally put ourselves through mental and physical adversity, we will live longer, we will be healthier, we will be more mentally and physically resilient and stable. It's the same for dogs, right? Except it's only recently that we've had to start kind of doing this artificially, right? Not that I would say our training is an artificial process, but in the past, just life and nature would provide these things. But listen, we're living in 2024, and in many cases, us dogs and humans aren't being challenged very much mentally and physically as a natural process. So we need to go and do those things, especially certain types of dogs, like the working dogs. People say, why do you do dog sport with these working dogs? You don't have to do this. This is a sport. I say yes, because it's a beautiful thing. This dog is bred for this. This dog loves this adversity. This dog loves this. This dog loves winning, but winning can't come without overcoming, without accomplishment, without some level of adversity, right? Otherwise, it's not fun, right? Like, fundamentally, and if you don't believe me, if you're like, oh, Haz just being crazy, he's being like He-Man, he's being like a barbarian, I would say I am not. I know it's getting dark. I'm going to go inside shortly. But think of it like this. Structured play. Okay, you don't believe me? Structured play. When you play with your dog, right? People ask me, how do you get your dogs to love playing with you so much, right? Every dog, whether it was that Great Dane that you saw a video of, or all my working dogs, you see how they play with me. You see how they engage with me with their toy. Why do they do that? Because I make them love the game by providing adversity and showing them how to be successful through that adversity. I am feeding into that primal need that they have, right? To overcome something, to achieve a goal, and to succeed in that goal. And obviously for every dog, that goal might be slightly different depending on the makeup of the dog, the breeding of the dog, the drive of the dog. But understanding when you look at the dog, what's a win for that dog, right? Okay, that's a win for him. All right, let me create there's a stray cat walking up on me. Psst, get away from here. Probably have rabies. Anyways, that thing, that thing that I figure out, it's like, okay, you like tugging, no problem. All right, you like tugging. Let me create some adversity. If I just had a limp noodle hand and I touched the tug and I let him win every single time, that wouldn't be enough. But when I grab that tug and we fight for it and I make him feel like he's almost gonna lose, but then at the last minute, I give him that win. And sometimes, guess what? He doesn't win. Sometimes he does lose. And believe me, when he loses, it creates stress, that negative punishment, right? Of, oh crap, I lost it. Let me get after it. And then I make him work to get it again, right? All of that adversity makes the success that much sweeter, right? And it's structured play, it's life, it's training, it's everything. So, these people that, go on about body language or whatever else, they don't understand. And they've never taken a dog there. They've never been there themselves, as someone already pointed out. So they don't know. They don't know the beauty of it, right? And they're allowing their own cowardice and fragility to inform their opinions. There is nothing more, there are a few things more enjoyable than finding a dog that is weak, that is fragile mentally and physically, and showing that dog how to be stronger. It is an extremely rewarding process. And a lot of people do not, a lot of trainers unfortunately don't seem to understand that, and they haven't experienced that. Give me a second, guys. I am going to go inside. Going inside. I see a bunch of questions, so I'll try to get to all of those. There it is. We just connect to the Wi-Fi inside, because I'll be inside, so everything should work a little bit better. We are in. Beautiful. So yeah, that's my little spiel on body language. And guys, if the sound isn't good after this, let me know. But yeah, that's my little spiel on body language, because I felt like there was still some things that hadn't been said when it came to that. Okay. All right, guys. So I see a ton of questions. I'm going to try and start getting through those. Guys, I see a lot of like you guys saying positive things, nice things. But I am now going to skip most of those comments just to get to some of these questions. But I appreciate all the positivity, and I see you all continuing to jump on here from all over the world, which is awesome. Michelle Surete says, if you haven't read his book yet, you really should. Such gold put into words. Thank you very much, Michelle. And for those of you wondering, and I've, the book, guys, I literally put everything in there. I just wanted to come up with a manual where I really, codified my training process, made it as simple as possible to understand, how to train things, how to fix basic behaviors. And it's like what is it? $15, So you guys check it out on my website, shieldk9.ca. You can see the book. Let's see here. My Frenchie is a maniac. I love Frenchies. They are awesome. Raising Busron says they're often anthropomorphizing their dogs as well. Well, even if they were anthropomorphizing their dogs, right? Like my kids, for instance, like they're humans, right? You don't believe I show them adversity that is age appropriate, that is targeted. You don't believe I put them through stress. So important, especially in, like I said, in 2024, right? The kids don't really deal, especially if they're growing up in a stable, household. They don't experience a lot of natural adversity. So it's really important, that you provide them with that adversity to make them more resilient individuals, to make them really value success, to value winning, right? And show them how to come through difficulty, right? And just like with dogs, some kids are very naturally resilient and some aren't. Some are more sensitive, right? Like one of my sons, he's a little bit sensitive, man. He's a sensitive, sweet little boy, but it's my job to prepare him for the world. And, I take that very seriously because, his success or failure as a man will be a direct reflection on the work that I've done raising him. Alvaro says, hey, you are a good teacher. I appreciate that, Alvaro. Creatine 34. Is the point of channeling a dog from defense to prey to teach activation? No. Some dogs naturally are defensive. They're predisposed to be defensive naturally. And For those dogs, look, if you want to get into bite work, the dog needs to move into prey if any biting is to occur. A dog cannot bite effectively in a true state of defense, right? Now, a lot of people mischaracterize what is prey and what is defense and what is social aggression. These three states are often mischaracterized. And what a lot of people don't understand is these three states can exist simultaneously to varying degrees within a dog. You can have a dog exhibiting prey drive, but also slightly be in a state of defense, right? Let's say the dog maybe 80% in prey, but there's also an element of defense in the state of mind that the dog is in. Or you can have a dog that's, in a high state of prey, but also exhibiting social aggression simultaneous with that. So, dogs aren't myopic in their emotions. They're not myopic in their drives, right? We like to think of things myopically because it's easy for us mentally, but the reality is a lot of the times dogs actually exist in simultaneous emotions and simultaneous drive states, but usually there is one that is always the strongest one. So we tend to identify that one and say the dog is there, when in reality, that's not actually true. The dog is there, but he's also there and there. Glad you're not speaking about the dogs that didn't pass the course. What course? The dogs that didn't pass the course. I don't know what you're talking about, dude. There is no dogs that didn't pass. Dogs. If we're talking about I mean, I assume you're talking about like obedience training or behavior training. There are no dogs that don't pass, right? Like the dogs will succeed, or if there's like maybe 0.001% of dogs that might have a legitimate neurological defect that prevents them from, maybe attaining a true, reliable level of obedience and behavioral stability. But that is a tiny, tiny percentage. I can count on the fingers of one hand, maybe those dogs that I have seen in, thousands of dogs at this point. So there are no such things as dogs that don't pass the course. There are handlers that don't pass the course because they don't do the necessary things to keep the dog, in the system. That they're not consistent. They're not mentally capable. But that is not a reflection on the dog. That is a handler problem. That is not a dog problem. All other things like decent temper. So Denise writes, all other things like decent temperament being equal, do you find a male or female does a bit better in protection work? One well-known trainer said he would pick a female as more protective. Well, testosterone matters, so no, and it's not about protective. This thing about protective, like what most people are referring to when they're speaking about protective, is they're speaking about a dog that has a suspicious or defensive mindset, and that is not something that is endemic to one sex over the other. It is true that typically females tend to be a little bit weaker than males, and again, as I said before, whether people want to hear it or not, testosterone matters. So all things being equal, if you have a dog that has exactly, let's say the same bloodlines, the same, genetic makeup, the same drive levels, the same nerve levels, and you have one that is a male and one that is a female, the male will be stronger in the work. Creatine 34, do not ask me about other creators. I will not. Well, creators. Other trainers, I won't speak to what they're doing or not doing. I'm really not paying attention. So what do you think about trainers saying reactive dogs need to meet more dogs? They've learned to snap at other dogs, but after a few days, they get better and learn they don't need to overreact. That's horseshit. Think about it. How many reactive dogs can you think of? Like my average client brings me a reactive dog that is between a year and 2 years old. That dog every day of its life has probably met another dog, and many of them as puppies were taken to puppy classes and socialized around tons of other puppies, so on and so forth. And as time has gone on, they've actually, the more dogs they've run into in public, without anything bad happening in many cases, by the way, the dogs have gotten progressively worse. Why is that? Well, I explained why dogs are reactive in other videos, but let's do it really quickly right now. Most dogs are reactive because they have some level of social anxiety. They perceive the possibility that something, and this is most dogs, this isn't all dogs, but most dogs that are reactive have some level of social anxiety, social insecurity, and they perceive a potential threat, right, from the other dog. And this does not have to be based in any level of learned experience. This is, in many cases, genetic, and you can see it from the beginning with them as puppies often, or sometimes it manifests later on as they get a little bit older. There's that, but then there's also a lot of these dogs in the beginning, they get reactive, whether it's just completely from insecurity or maybe there's some element of arousal, excitement there as well. Usually they're a lot insecure and a little bit excited. And you put those two things together and you get arousal, right? And what happens is over time, the dog exhibits the behavior over and over and over again, and the behavior becomes progressively more intense. I've actually had stray dogs come in, like dogs that were like strays that like people adopted off the streets of Mexico or whatever, that were reactive, right? How's that possible? Like these things were literally wandering the streets with packs of other dogs, and yet they're reactive, right? No, no, no. It is a behavior that's based in some level of insecurity, and also there's a self-satisfying element that comes from the arousal and also the response of the other dog, whether it's a positive response or a negative response, right? So there's an element of self-satisfaction in there, and there's also an element of stress that is creating the behavior. So you've got stress and you've got pleasure working together to make this wonderful medley that is reactivity, which is probably the most common problem that your average client faces. So no, if the solution was simply forcing them to meet numerous other dogs, um, you know, it would be an easy problem to fix and nobody would have this problem, but that is not the solution. Can I train French bulldogs? No, man. I can train every other dog, but not French bulldogs. Not French bulldogs. They are the exception. Uh, that video was sad. It was so nice to see her doing so well afterwards. That video was sad because you saw a dog in a complete state of helplessness, fear, and insecurity. A dog that didn't know how to deal with the world. And that is the reality for a lot of these dogs before any training, right? Before anything's ever happened to them. Again, a lot of these, people that think emotionally and they don't, have a logical mind and they don't really have a lot of experience to go along with that would have you believe something bad happened to the dog. That dog was abused. Some terrible shit happened to that dog to make that dog like that. That dog is one of countless dogs that I've seen like that. That's just one that I happened to catch on video. But correct me if I'm wrong, the general pet owner may not know how to help a dog come out of adversity or a period of learning stress stronger on the other side. Yes, that is very true, which is why we have professional dog trainers. BJ says, ordered your program. Awesome. If you're in the online training, that is great. That is great. How did I get clients when I first started? Word of mouth, primarily word of mouth. How is the S litter doing? Oh, you're on the litter. You're on the list for one of the two females in that litter. That was a male heavy litter. We had 8 males, 2 females in that litter. So that litter is actually doing quite well. And we got some blacks, some bicolors, and some sables, if I remember correctly. They're being whelped off site. I have them whelped with Jessica, one of my trainers. She does all the whelping for us. She's fantastic. And she whelps them right in her house so they get that round the clock coverage that I think all puppies need when they're really, really young. So Swamp is looking after the litter very well. We'll probably wean them at about 4 or 5 weeks. And then we'll bring Swamp back. And then when they're about 7-ish weeks, they'll come to Shield after their first round of shots. So they're doing quite well. Would you use a correction from God, e-collar correction on a dog for counter surfing, or make it personal? I mean, it really depends on the dog and the situation. Uh, you know, e-collar is great because you can make it appear like the counter got the dog. For corrections where the dog is doing something usually when you're not around, it's always best to create a targeted suspicious association. A suspicious association is when the dog perceives that something associated with their environment generally is what caused the aversive consequence. And that's something that you have to be very wary of when you are punishing a dog, especially when it's not a personal punishment, when you're using something impersonal like an e-collar or something like this, right? That the dog doesn't make a mistake and think that something in the environment caused the correction. It wasn't this target behavior that you're trying to target. So, for instance, let's say you had a dog that barked at the door. So they would come on the deck and they would come to your door and they would bark to be let in, and you found this to be undesirable. So you said, let me punish this behavior. So you put a shock collar on the dog, and the dog came up on the deck and started barking at the door, and you, let's say, lit him up on the e-collar. So he would yelp, run around in a circle, and run off the deck. And then all of a sudden he won't come on the deck anymore, even when you're calling him on the deck. And the reason he won't come on the deck anymore is because he thinks being on the deck caused the correction. He didn't perceive that it was him barking that caused the correction. That is a suspicious association. So when you understand that this can happen, right, then you're wary of that when you correct the dog, and you don't want the dog to make incorrect suspicious associations. That being said, there is a time when you do want the dog to make certain associations, when you want him to believe something like the counter or the stove is hot. Don't put your paws up there, right? But again, you have to think about these things a little bit. It's not complicated, but it is something that you do need to think about. Why do dogs attack another dog that is throwing up or sneezing? I mean, I've actually not witnessed that. But I would assume if you see that happening and it's a true attack, that they see that the dog is in a, dogs can be a little bit ruthless, right? They see the dog is in a weakened state, that the dog is in a physical state that is disabling them, and it is making it more likely that, the dog, that vulnerability triggers a predatory instinct. And I have seen that, when one dog, let's say, there's a bunch of dogs running around, and one dog maybe like squeals, high pitched squeal, right? And it's not like a happy squeal, maybe they got hurt or something. And then the other dogs will turn on it, right? It's that predatory instinct being triggered by that weakness, and then the energy of the other dogs around kind of all feeding in together, and they turn on the perceived weak one. So close to healing off leash through a busy area, but struggling with duration during healing. 10-month Doberman. How should I teach duration? Duration is taught the same way that you taught the behavior, right? All it is you're just scaling things up. So you use the combination of motivation and obligation, right? You use the combination of, if you did this correctly, Tara, and I'm assuming that you're going through my online training when you're asking this. So if you're not, I can't speak to what you have done. But if you have, you use the combination of pressure and positive reinforcement to teach the dog what the desired behavior is. And all you're going to do is you're going to scale that from here to here to here to here, right? And let's say you said, okay, I've done one step and I had to do X amount of things to get one step. Well, the first thing that I'm going to do before I try to take 2 or 3 steps, and again, this is an analogy, right? In reality, when you're healing, you're usually, even in the beginning, doing significantly more than one step, right? But let's say you had to give the dog one, a certain amount of pressure on the e-collar and a certain amount of food to get him to do that one step. Well, now instead of trying to do 2, 3, 4 steps, what you're going to do is you're going to say, okay, let me get to one step by reducing all the things that I just did to get this one step by 50%. Then let me reduce that down to 25%. Then let me bring that down to 5% until I can do that one step fairly reliably with variable levels of reinforcement, not always having to help the dog to the most level, to the highest degree with positive or negative reinforcement. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to expand on that and continue my variable reinforcement schedule, playing with it, of course, right? sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less, depending on the performance of the dog, depending on the level of difficulty that I'm asking the dog to do. And we're going to build up from there, right? Would you say livestock guardian dog's job is to be reactive? Yes, I would, Nick, which is why most of them are reactive. I'm actually writing my final pleasure in ethics about how basically constant pleasure is bad. That's very interesting, Soulstar. So like, if you think about it, almost every problem that we have in our modern society, whether it's obesity, and this is as somebody that does not have a six pack, so I'm well aware of, like, I like sugar, right? The reality is I like sugar. I don't eat as much of it as I would like to eat because I know that the result would be I would be morbidly obese. But the reality is that I know in order to attain a peak level of fitness, I should really be eating next to no sugar, right? Especially on refined sugars, right? So, but it's a pleasure center, right? It is a pleasure center. There's a lot of vices that we have that are based on pleasure that are really not good for us, especially if there is a lack or enough of a lack of adversity in our lives. Productive adversity, right? Productive adversity caused by exercise, caused by doing things that are mentally and physically challenging that do have an upside if you are successful in them. And it's the same for the dogs. Richard Hines, Dog Whisperer, says German Shepherds and all other dogs can't compete with Malinois. Is that true? If so, why do you use German Shepherds? Well, I competed with Malinois and I now compete with German Shepherds. It is true if you want to do dog sport, right? If you're pursuing dog sport, look, a good Malinois generally will do better in dog sport if it's a good one. I mean, a lot of people don't have a good one. I would say a good Malinois is harder to find than a good German Shepherd. There's a lot of Malinois that have the level of neuroses and drive that make them appear to be good, but in reality they don't have the stability. Why do I have German Shepherds? Because I prefer living with the German Shepherds, and I prefer training the German Shepherd. Belgian Malinois are super fun. They're super responsive dogs, but I don't know what the word is. It's almost like it's not challenging enough. Like I like the German Shepherd because they're a little bit more independent. It takes a little more to get them revving and rolling. Like for instance, a Belgian Malinois, you can train it like five different ways. It's going to be naturally fast in positions. It's going to be naturally fast in the retrieves, in out. It's going to jump really well. It's going to be super fast on long attacks and escapes. Like if it's a half decent Malinois, right? It might have shittier barking and maybe not be the best tracker, but like fundamentally, it's gonna look good in the obedience. It's gonna look good in the protection if you're any kind of trainer and it's any kind of Malinois. But I like the German Shepherd. They're a little more complicated, but they're stronger dogs. And because they're stronger dogs, like mentally and physically generally, I find they're more enjoyable to just be around. I like the vibe. And then from a sales standpoint, the reason why I much prefer to sell German Shepherds as family protection dogs, as police dogs, is I think they're just a better working dog, a better utility dog, right? And that's why you see a lot of the herders, right? Like most police departments, they say they have a Mal. Really, what they have is a herder, which is a German Shepherd, Belgian Malinois mix, right? Regardless of how the dog appears, most of them are this. And the reason for that is because, purebred Malinois are generally a little bit too sensitive, a little bit too soft, a little bit too high strung, even when you're looking at them as a purely working dog. But that's, my opinion. Will I ever get a Malinois again to compete with? Yes, I probably will. But currently, I'm very happy with my German Shepherds. I think they're just stronger, more stable, more utilitarian dogs, and beautiful dogs too. So I would disagree with Richard. And there has certainly been German Shepherds that have outcompeted Malinois and won FCI Worlds. So, Miss Clark says, you were, of course, so right about motivating my Labrador. I thought his big reward was food, but it was actually something else. Thanks for the insight. I appreciate that. No problem. Glad you figured it out. Ian says, gotta go. I'll see you all back in the group soon once I have my certification done. Take care, guys. Ian is working on his trainer certification, and he is, I have no doubt, soon going to be a Shield Pro trainer. For those of you wondering, I do have a online trainer certification program. In order to pass, even a skilled trainer like Ian needs to spend time taking a dog all the way through our obedience program. And he's actually trying to do it with 4 dogs. So kudos to him. And he wants to take the test, the practical test, because for me to certify you, you need to take the practical test and you need to submit that test in an unedited video format in which you hit a whole bunch of targeted behaviors. And you have to do so in a public place, and you have to do so off leash. And I also give bonus points to those people that are able to do so with a higher level of complexity than the minimum standard. We have a minimum standard that you have to beat in order to be certified. And then I give bonus points for, hey, look, do it with multiple dogs. We had one gentleman, Isaiah, he actually did it with 2 different dogs at the same time. He ran 2 dogs at the same time. And one of the dogs, wasn't even wearing an e-collar. There's different things that you could do to make it a little bit more complicated. So Ian's really going all in, which I appreciate. I now can walk leash free with my mount everywhere. I never use a leash e-collar, but walk or car rides are leash free and I never stress. He runs around but checks in occasionally. Learning from you. That's from Noir. Awesome, buddy. Happy to hear it. Finally, a manly stream. It's always manly. You use the ball tug a lot. How did you figure out which toy worked best for him? I'm not sure which toy what you're talking about, Deadhead, but I prefer the ball because it's smaller. I don't like using large tugs when I train, just bigger thing to keep on my body. I like having like small, rubber balls, easy to clean. I can stick it in my pocket. I like toys that are small. I don't like huge toys. How much do you think a relationship with the dog plays into owning working dogs? It's very important, right? Like if you'll see my working dogs in their outdoor exercise pens, if I walk by, they all start screaming and crying and jumping on the fence, trying to get at me, right? Because they love me. They love working with me. Working with me is the best time that they have, like there is, and I have people that'll take them for walks, and stuff like that. They still want to do that. Like I said, the one that lives in the house with me, Gage, if I leave him at home, he just stays in the window, staring out the window all the time. But he's at home with the kids. He could do anything. He could run around the house. He could lie on the floor. He could go play in the backyard. He could do whatever he wants. But he would rather come and spend the entire day with me, most of which, by the way, he'll be sitting in a crate in my side-by-side because I got a whole bunch of other dogs to train and a whole bunch of office work to do. He would rather do that than stay at home and be comfortable with the family, right? Because I'm fulfilling that primal part of his brain, that not the comfort side only, right? Like he could have all the comfort and pleasure he wants for free at home, but instead he chooses to come and work, or he would always like to choose that. Sometimes I leave him at home regardless, but let's see here. Vimon says, I bought your book. Great value. My German Shepherd has high toy drive, and I developed a great structured play routine with him. When should I fade the toy during healing training? I'm using it as a reward. What I say to people with rewards is rewards are not something that you look at as fading, as long as the behavior isn't exclusively dependent on the reward, right? Do I have to show him the ball in order for him to heal? Well, then that's a problem. But if I can give him a ball occasionally as a bonus for healing, if I can incentivize him to want to heal with the ball from time to time, there's nothing wrong with that. It's when he requires the reward as bribery to do the behavior instead of the reward being a paycheck for the behavior. Those are 2 different things, right? So I don't stop rewarding my dogs for things forever. right? Like there's not a time when I say, okay, there's no more rewards for this whatsoever. I will still variably reward my dogs for very basic behaviors all through their lives. I just won't maybe do it super regularly with the most basic functional behaviors. How do you desensitize a dog to putting a collar on once it is on? He doesn't care, but the act of putting it on makes him bite. There are a lot of dogs, David, that have a bad reaction to putting a collar on their neck. And usually it's dogs that, well, in all cases, it is dogs that we get in that have learned that when you put the collar on, you are going to restrain them, right? You're going to restrain them. Mommy puts the collar on and puts the leash on, and then I can't go anywhere and I can't, run around and do whatever it is I want to do. And I hate that. And I've learned that if I nip at her and mouth at her, and then ultimately maybe escalate to biting her, this collar is not going on. And then there are also some dogs that just really don't like being touched on the neck. I find these are dogs that are more prone to social aggression, and the act of being touched on the back of the neck elicits that social aggression. And in all cases, we have to make it good to be good and bad to be bad, right? We have to incentivize the good behavior. The collar going on you is a good thing, right? The collar going on you means we're going to train, we're going to have fun, we're going to do things together. You're going to get positive things when the collar goes on. You tried to bite me when I'm putting the collar on you is a bad thing. If you try to do that, that is going to become very bad for you. That is not going to be a positive experience for you. By achieving that dichotomy and setting yourself up to be successful there, you're going to quickly teach the dog, hey, behave yourself when I'm putting the collar on you. If you do so, good things will happen. If you're not going to behave yourself, bad things are going to happen. And then being smart and setting that situation up appropriately, maybe using an intermediate tool like a slip lead to get to the point where you can put that collar on the dog in a safe way, not just freewheeling and hoping for the best, right? I'm in the second week of the off-leash course. This is from Ricky Moore. How long per session do I condition phase the e-collar? Well, I would say watch the videos and follow them because I am actually very specific there, Ricky. But my average training session is no longer than 10 minutes. Flag America says winged contact or 3/4 inch contacts for German Shepherds. I use both. I find they both work for your average German Shepherd. How would you train a big size working German Shepherd for a private security company? No nose work needed. Well, I would train him. I would. What do you mean? Like, how would I train? You're asking me for my entire process to do protection training? Well, that is a very long process. If you're interested in that, check out my online courses. There's literally, probably 100 hours of video on protection training in there if you want to know the whole process. Same for obedience. This isn't something where I can be like, yeah, Nikos, just do this, that, and everything else. Just do this, and this, and the dog will be ready to go. No, 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 no. This is a whole process, my friend. Velcro says, my birthday's tomorrow. I'll buy myself the book. I've learned so much from you in 9 months since I got my German Shepherd. I don't know where we would be without your help. Thank you. Well, I appreciate that, Velcro, and I wish you a happy birthday. Can e-collar be worn when the dog goes swimming? Yes, Jenny. E-collars were first invented by, well, I wouldn't say invented, but the first people to really use the e-collar were hunters, and their dogs are in the water all the time. So yes, the e-collar is indeed waterproof and can be used in the water. Dog Trainer Cebu says, I don't recognize the background house. Are you on vacation somewhere? Dog Trainer Cebu, I am never on vacation. I am always working, but I do happen to be in another location within the continental United States. Mitchell says, watched a video where the decoy flanked a dog and it came off the bite. Now that it won doing this, how would you get it to stay on? Video no longer available. Well, oftentimes with young dogs, if they're not ready and they're on a bite, when you flank the dog, lifting the dog simultaneously, usually by the flat collar and then also by the excess skin that the dog has, between their stomach and their thigh, aka the flank area, and you lift that, it creates a strange discomfort that the dog isn't used to feeling, and usually the dog will drop whatever's in its mouth. Usually, this works in the beginning with younger dogs or dogs that maybe don't have as much drive, but over time, very quickly, you'll see that the dog kind of becomes desensitized to that and will actually stay on the grip, even while being flanked. So it's just a question of acclimation and slowly acclimatizing the dog to that. How early would you start corrections on a present puppy? When I start training a puppy, I start right at 8 weeks, but my corrections are not with tools. My corrections are direct from the handler, and they're done in a smart way. If you take my online puppy course, I get in detail about the type of corrections that I do and when I do them. It is very important when you're training a puppy to not be too militant. There's a combination of things. Like there's some behaviors that are completely unacceptable that I will not allow the puppy to get away with. But I also won't micromanage the puppy and try to make the puppy into like this perfect little robot, right? I want the puppy to be a puppy just like I want a child to be a child. And there is a nice balance to be accomplished there. There are some behaviors that you certainly shouldn't put up with, but there's a lot of bad behaviors that puppies will engage in that's very natural for a puppy or a small child, ironically, to do that simply having good management will avoid. So if you're asking me, should you be utilizing correction devices on a puppy, I would say profoundly no. Can a dog truly be in prey if it isn't quiet? Yes, they certainly can be. At what point do you say a dog isn't fit for bite work? When I see that the dog is nervous and clearly doesn't want to be there, and it's not something where the dog just needs to learn how to cope with that nervousness, I would refer you to that video I had on that pressa, where I did a protection test on a pressa, and in the beginning, that pressa was avoidant and hiding behind the handler. And yet I was extremely optimistic, and I said, no worries, we're gonna see what there is to be seen here. And I was actually quite comfortable saying that we were gonna bring that pressa out from behind the handler, and you were gonna see a very different picture. And lo and behold, when we did a follow-up video with him, actually not too long ago, I think a few months ago, you see a dog that's at the end of the leash, clearly enjoying the work, clearly engaged with the decoy, right? Because again, that was a dog that just needed to go through that adversity and understand how to productively deal with that adversity, right? James says, second child is being born soon. So, oh, sorry, Miss Clark, just to be clear, if I start trying to take, if I think this is one thing. So if I see a dog that's just generally nervous and insecure, I will never do bite work with that dog. If I see a dog that's like really unstable in their temperament or in their behavior, I will never do bite work with that dog. If I see a dog, that is overall social, appear to be stable, and just showing a little bit of avoidance in the bite work, I'll take the dog through that process for a little bit, and I'll see if the dog is able to come forward, how the dog responds to that adversity, if the dog is able to start to show improvement within a relatively short period of time. And if the dog is not, if the dog's clearly saying, listen, I am just really not comfortable with this, my heart is not here, I don't want to do this, then at that point, my recommendation is always to accept the dog's wishes and say, listen, this is obviously not for you. Bite work is not something you can force upon a dog. It's either in them or it's not, right? They either will want to do it or they won't. And, you know, you have to, at the end of the day, listen, if you've been at it for a couple of weeks, maybe even a month or two, and you see that the dog's just not there, they just really don't want to be there, I would say that's enough for me. James says second child is being born soon, so 2 car seats in the back seat of my truck. How do you feel about Roughline kennel in the bed of the pickup truck? Yeah, by all means, man, go for it. A lot of people do that. They use gunners or roughlines in the back of the truck. Grim Reaper says, can we get an update on the S litter, please? Can you tell us more about Yarrow's size and personality, assuming you've met Yarrow in person? Well, Grim Reaper, Yarrow is a half-brother to my dog, Bang. And if you've seen Bang, Bang is a Nitra daughter. And Yarrow is a Nitra son. He is a male of average size. He is not excessively large or small. He's compact, he's well muscled, he's well built. He's a very social dog. He is a black dog. Again, for those of you that want to see the pedigree of the dog, if you go onto uh, my puppies and litters page, right, and you click on that litter, there's detailed breakdown of the pedigrees and why I did the breeding, so on and so forth. He's a social, open dog, and quite frankly, I bred him because A, he's DM free, and B, I'm getting access to Nitra's bloodline, right? And for those of you that don't know, the Eisenkrauts dogs, Nitra, what is it, vom Eisenkrauts? Yeah, Nitra vom Eisenkrauts, Debbie vom Eisenkrauts, and then that entire line of dogs, very strong, strong line, right? Very well-known line, a line that is legendary and extremely strong producers. So I have Bang vom Eisenkrauts, who hopefully I will be breeding in her upcoming heat, and then I have and then I have Yarrow vom Eisenkrauts owned by my friend Ann Lee, who I bred to swamp. So I'm actually getting access to that line, both on the top half and the bottom half. So there's a reason why I did that breeding. It was very targeted breeding because I really wanted access to that blood. And I probably, again, we'll see how these puppies turn out, but I have no doubt they'll be social, they'll be drivey, and I will probably do that breeding again. The other thing I really like about my dog Bang is that she's a very resilient. She's naturally social, but she's also naturally very resilient female. She responds very well to adversity. If I want to improve her performance, that's why she's fantastic in the e-collar training. My e-collar training in for dog sport is designed to create more drive, to create more resilience in the dog, to make the dog stronger, to make the dog faster, to make the dog, more aggressive in the behaviors. And she is the type of dog that responds extremely well to this type of training. So I know that this probably comes from the Nitra side of the pedigree, and I'm very excited to bring it through the male, who's also a really, really nice dog in training as well. Do you need to do drive channeling if the dog is a prey junkie already? In what sense? You have to be more specific. Why you look like a WWE superstar? Um, I don't know that I do. I think I'm missing some of the muscle mass necessary to be successful in that industry. But thanks, I think. Is there a place that will help people that were hit with a financial crisis? Vet said, my blue nose has allergies. Nothing helps, no medication. He bleeds and cries, can't afford another visit. Well, I'm very sorry to hear that. I'm sure there are some places that would finance you. I would say that with allergies, as with human beings, I am not a vet, by the way, but I'll say this. As with human beings, your best bet with allergies is to look at the diet. Okay. Obviously, there are some dogs they can eat absolute garbage and be fine for their entire lives, just as there are some humans that can, smoke a pack a day, drink a pint of whiskey a day and live on absolute junk and live to 100 years old. And then there's some of us that, you eat one wrong thing and your entire week is ruined, right? And there are dogs that are the exact same thing. Unfortunately, skin issues are very common in the pit bulls and bullies. I would say that the first thing that you need to do is you need to look at the diet of the dog, and you need to remove all processed crap from the dog, right? All processed stuff. I've had a lot of success with dogs that have really bad allergies. I've had two things that are successful, okay? Thing number one is putting the dog on a raw diet with fish oil as supplementation included in the food every day. That has worked for some dogs. That does not work for all dogs. For other dogs, I've had a lot of success going with a fish-based kibble, okay? Kibble that is high quality and that is based on a fish, right? So Costco salmon and rice works really well. I think Purina makes a fish-based kibble as well. But fundamentally, a quality kibble that is fish-based has also worked for some dogs, right? But just removing any crap the dog is getting, and just trying to really clean the diet of the dog up. If you're using harsh cleaners, I've had a lot of pit bulls that come into my kennel actually that don't do well with bleach, that don't do well with Lysol or any of these like typical household cleaners that a lot of people use. So you would look at your cleaners and make sure that you're using things that are not going to irritate the dog's skin. If you have a swimming pool with chlorine in it and the dog's jumping in the chlorine, again, for some dogs, that can be really irritating to their skin. So these are some things that you can look at to hopefully fix your problem. But good luck with that. Hi, Has, love your videos. Where do you get your pants? I get them from Eric Outdoors. Well, genetically reactive female male will always be reactive. I know you can somewhat control the reactivity, but does reactivity ever go away? Listen, reactivity is I mean, listen, in some dogs it's something that expresses itself very strongly, and in other dogs it is kind of there, but it's not really there. But for sure it goes away in the sense that if you're on it and you stay on it, the dog won't exhibit it in any kind of strong way. But if you're not, right, if you're very kind of half-assed with it, will it just go away on its own? No, of course not. Is one good training enough? No, some dogs need regular reminders that they're not allowed to be reactive. But it's not overly complicated to do. Like, for instance, my dog Gage, my personal competition dog Gage, is an extremely reactive dog. And whenever he hasn't been out in public for a while and I take him out in public for the first time, he always, come out all hackled up, all sketchy, look at somebody, go, ugh, or he'll make some little huff. But I'm on him right when hey, knock that shit off. Don't do that. Right. And he'll be like, and maybe I have to correct him a time or two, right in the beginning. And then he'll settle right down and he'll be good again. But if I haven't had him in public for like a couple of weeks and I take him back in public place where there's a lot of people and stuff, for sure he'll be sketchy in the beginning and then he'll kind of settle down, right? And that's just his natural predisposition. But I have to be on him. If I allowed him to get away with huffing and puffing at people and growling and being a bit of a jerk, every time we got back in public after maybe a bit of a long layoff, then for sure that reactivity would come back and he'd be a full idiot, right? So hope that answers your question, right? In some dogs, it's a very natural, strong predisposition that requires regular application of reinforcement and punishment in order to maintain that stability of behavior that you want in the dog. And for other dogs, yeah, just like a few, firm messages. Hey, man, like you can't be like this. Instead, be like that. And they are good. And it doesn't really take a lot to keep them like that, right? So it depends on the individual. Shout out from California, considering dog from Slovakia, 6 months old. They want 7,500 plus shipping. Is 9K within the realm of a good price? No. Here's the thing. There's a reason I'm actually going to Europe to buy dogs. Okay. Listen, I'm a professional. And I can't tell you how many times I've been had by the Europeans, especially when I couldn't go over there because of COVID and stuff. And what arrived in the crate was not exactly what I thought I was getting. All right. And I'm a professional at this. I do this for a living, right? There's a reason I actually am flying to Europe. I am putting my eyes on the dogs. I will be personally testing those dogs and putting through a number of tests. I don't take anybody's word for anything, right? Whether it's being had on purpose or just maybe a miscommunication, people thinking something's good which really isn't. Quite frankly, here's why it's not good. Okay, a 6-month-old puppy, you're not old. They're not old enough yet to really like judge the quality of their joints, right? So you can't get good X-rays on the dog and make sure that the dog is healthy. I would never pay that much, and no one in Europe, by the way, would pay that much for a 6-month-old dog. Um, quite frankly, for 9,000 USD, um, you can get a dog with significantly more going on than just a 6-month-old with absolutely no training. Here's the other thing. A lot of people think that because the dog comes from Europe, the dog has a quality. And I know that we as human beings, we like things that are from other places because, if it's from another place, it must be special, right? The reason I go to Europe and buy dogs from Europe is because I need to buy a bunch of dogs and I need a bunch of dogs all at the same time. That is the only reason I go to Europe. It is not because individual dogs don't exist within Canada, the United States, that are often better than what you'll get in Europe, right? For instance, my dog Chico, okay? My dog Chico, and there's a reason why, yeah, my last three competition dogs have been Canadian dogs. They've been Canadian born, Canadian bred, right? There's a reason for that. It's not because I don't have access to European dogs and I don't buy European dogs all the time, right? It is because if you're really looking at the individual quality of the dog, the days of silos are over. These European dogs have been in the United States and Canada for generations. There are fantastic dogs in the United States and in Canada, right? We're just a much bigger landmass, right? And the dogs are spread out a lot further. And then there's less dogs available that are like, let's say, the type of dogs that I would look for in job lots. Like I often buy dogs in North America, by the way. I'll buy dogs in Canada, one here, one there. I'll buy dogs in the United States, one here, one there. But there just isn't, like, I can't buy like 5 or 6 all at once generally. It's very rare to find that amount of dogs available in North America, which is why we go to Europe, because I can go and look at 100 green dogs, know what I'm looking at, test them, and pick like the 4 best ones that I am going to use in my breeding, or sorry, in my program, both the protection program and the police program. And I know what I'm looking at, but I still go in person for a reason, right? If you don't know what you're doing, I would not suggest that. You're really not going to get anything better than you would get buying a dog from someone that's using the exact same lines, right? That lives in Canada or that lives in the United States. So no, I would not recommend that. Europe is buying dogs in Europe. If you really don't know what you're doing, is it's kind of like going to a used car dealership. It's not a good idea. You really need to know what you're doing. Just like, look, I like horses, right? And I was thinking, like, my next horse, I'll probably import from Europe, but I'm not stupid enough that I would just take someone's word for it over the internet and like say, yeah, oh, that's a nice horse. Oh, really? Oh, look at the cool video. Okay, yeah, send them to me here. What? How many euros do you want? Yeah, 30,000. Here you go. No, I would never do that because I know that I would most likely be had. Instead, what I would do is I would go and I would either work with a professional that's already imported, the horses that I want in North America. I would go and see them in person and make sure it's what I want. Um, but I certainly wouldn't be trusting someone I didn't know in Europe to, send me the horse that I want. And it's the same for the dogs. Can a sausage dog be trained? Asking for a friend. Yes, they can. Can you talk about Kojak and his temperament? I'll talk briefly about Kojak. I post sometimes we have dogs. We have been training here for a couple of months. We buy them and we like them on initial testing. But then as we get to know them, we realize, oh man, like this dog isn't going to be good for our clients, right? Our average clients are, well-to-do people that, they're not looking for a dog that has any kind of behavioral predispositions that make them difficult to deal with. And just from a liability standpoint, we will not sell those types of dogs generally. So in terms of Kojak, really nice dog, nice in the work, so on and so forth. But as he's getting a little bit older now, he's like around 19, 20 months, he started being a little bit prone to resource guarding his food with the females that work for us, like the female kennel staff, so on and so forth. And he's gotten a little bit nasty with them. Now, our trainers have worked on that, and actually, he's quite good with them because he knows who they are and he knows that he has to listen to them. And he's actually quite a nice dog to handle, really nice in the bite work, nice in the obedience, quite sensitive in the obedience, very easy to deal with, very, very nicely driven dog. But he's a dog that, in terms of the resource guarding and stuff, I can see that, if somebody doesn't know what they're doing, it could get worse. If it's not managed properly, it could get worse. He's not nearly as bad with men for whatever reason. I've run into that before where I see dogs that, they'll just test females more, but they're really good with the vast majority of men. So he's good with all the male staff that we have, but with some of the female staff, especially the smaller female staff, he tends to just be a little bit of a dick in the kennel. Out and about, he's great, but just in the kennel, especially with his food. He can be a little nasty with them. So for us, it's not a dog that we would sell as a family protection dog to a family for obvious reasons. So our loss is going to be somebody else's gain. We're going to lose money on him, but it is what it is, and this is the business that we're in. Sometimes there are things like this that happen, and we have to be very careful and make sure that we're not selling, if at all possible, dogs that exhibit any of these types of behaviors. Is your Dutch Shepherd doing well with his new owner still? Well, he's not my Dutch Shepherd anymore, and I haven't heard anything bad. So I did reach out. I haven't heard back from them. So I'll take that as a good sign, and hopefully things are going well with him. One of the hardest dogs to train are, this is from Dog Trader Cebu, are those that grew up in the streets and rescued. The nervous mutts. Takes a while for them to adjust to being with humans. Yes, it certainly does. Are dogs 8 years old worth doing training on, such as off-leash training? Yeah, I would say so. I mean, those dogs can easily live another 4 years. Putting a couple of months into training the dog something useful like an off-leash recall would certainly improve the dog's life and probably would improve yours as well. Do you believe that dogs truly like a behavior more if it was free shaped? No, I do not. I do not believe that. Huge fan of your work. I appreciate that. That's from Maine Refined Canine. Brian Tran says, "Hey, what would be your approach to dealing with dogs that exhibit involuntary urination, submissive, excited urination past the puppy stage of 8+ months?" That usually happens for one of two reasons: excessive excitement, or dogs that are extremely submissive and very sensitive to social pressure. And anything is, even just paying attention to that dog and reaching for that dog and bending over that dog to pet that dog is enough social pressure that it will cause them to pee in a submissive manner. And then the other side of it are dogs that are just like, they get really excited really fast, and anything just, you know, gets them to basically release their bladder. So for the dog that gets really excited really fast, I try to be very unexciting. If anything, I actually am a little bit mean in the beginning when they come up to me, like, "Hey, go away, sit," right? And usually this actually calms them down. It brings down their adrenal system enough that it prevents the urination. For the dogs that are socially submissive, what I try to do is actually not be too handsy with them in the beginning, right? I try to get them thinking about something else immediately. So I might pull out some food and right away get into some food luring with the dog, and not praise the dog or touch the dog too much. Be very minimal, be very like matter of fact, and not interact. It's the interaction, right? Even when you're being really nice with these dogs, like, "Hey, puppy," that's enough. They'll pee, right? So just being very calm and very matter of fact, and immediately maybe pulling some food out, getting the dog to sit with no words, putting the leash on and going, and then letting the dog kind of acclimate to being in your social presence. Usually it's a better idea for these types of dogs. Maine Refined Canine, DDR or Czech bloodline German Shepherd. What's the difference? I mean, primarily Czech bred dogs are very rare now. I mean, all the top handlers in Czech don't even really use Czech bred dogs, and that's for a reason. I know there's a bunch of shysters out there that still, you know, are selling Americans the dream of the Czech bred dog, and make believing that they're like super awesome and really like unique dogs that are so much better than your average working line German Shepherd. But there really is no difference. DDR, again, it's not a thing. I know there are some people, they claim they have these DDR dogs. Look, the Iron Curtain came down a long time ago. These dogs have all been breeding. You got West German dogs, you've got Czech dogs, you've got a whole bunch of different localities now breeding dogs. The best dogs are probably in your backyard. You got some really good working line dogs now in the United States and Canada. Really fantastic breeding programs. You're not getting anything. There is not one dog I have seen from Europe that is better than the top working blood from Canada and the United States. I've seen some fire dogs because the bloodlines, listen, we're no longer siloed. We're no longer siloed by country, by locality anymore. It is 2024, right? You can literally fly anything anywhere. You can have anything from anywhere. All the best working bloodlines have been available worldwide. That's why you have, really, really strong dogs. Like my dog, Chico von Marchberger, I'd say he's probably the best German Shepherd I've ever owned, and he's born and bred in Canada. You know what I mean? His father, Pepper von Cap Carthago, is a German dog, but you know, whatever. Like his sperm is available all around the world, and he has kids all across Europe, all across the United States, all across Canada. You know what I mean? And Chico's actually the second Pepper son I've had, but he is such a strong, strong dog, right? And then his mother again is a Canadian bred dog, but her parents come from, again, I think Germany and Holland or something like this, right? So the bloodlines are everywhere. The bloodlines are everywhere, and show me a better dog than Chico, right? Genetically, there are very few people that can. There's very few out there. Like he's in the top 1%, and that's just one example. There are some real bangers, right? Both in Canada and the United States. You know, again, there's a reason I go to Europe for dogs, and it's because of the numbers. It's not because of individual quality. If I was just buying one dog, I would not go to Europe, right? I would not really. Like, and I'll tell you this, to get a dog of Chico's caliber, for instance, if I was to go to Europe, I'd be paying like 70,000 euros for that dog. So it's a good thing I found him in Canada. All right, what's the difference between FCI and KMPV Malinois and Dutch Shepherds? FCI dogs are purebred. They have like a physical standard. The KMPV dogs, we call them Malinois and Dutch Shepherd, but fundamentally they're yellow dogs and stripy dogs, and they're always a combination of Malinois and Dutch Shepherd and German Shepherd, and sometimes some other things in there. So those are not purebred dogs, but there's a reason why the KMPV dogs are almost always stronger than the FCI dogs, right? All right, guys, I'm wrapping it up here. I'm just gonna see if there's I'm gonna see if there's anything interesting. Oh, we have a super chat. For a dog who's insecure about the outside world, Tail Tuck, can that dog go through the 6-week functional obedience course? Yes, I would strongly recommend it. Just go slow, and it's not a race, it is a marathon. And remember, if you haven't caught the first part of my video where I get in depth on like the way that you should look at training a stressed and fearful dog, I strongly suggest you go back and rewind this live and watch that again. Yeah, if you talk to your vet, this is to somebody else. My dog has allergies and is on prescription meds as well as Benadryl. I'm going to talk to the vet about homemade or raw dog food. Your vet is a product of our pharmacentric medical system. Just like if you had allergies or if you had some autoimmune issue and you talk to your doctor about your diet, he would be like, "Are you crazy? What next? Are you going to like sacrifice a goat and read its entrails?" Right? That's because, again, remember what I talked about, how we as human beings assume that because, we're more technologically advanced than we were in the past, that we now know everything. It is very clear that we know very little actually about the human body, and we know even less about nutrition. Just look at things like the food pyramid, for instance. I would strongly look into your diet, Michelle. Sorry, your dog's diet. And again, relate that directly to humans. All these autoimmune issues that have been demonstrated time and time again, you can cure them, or at least put them into remission by simply changing your diet and getting off all this crap and doing certain things like exercise and vitamin D and all of this type of stuff that it turns out that we used to do always naturally in the past, but now we've stopped doing them because we live in this, more let's say this this pillowcase world that we live in now, it would probably be the same thing with your dog. But I mean, I'm not saying you're not to ask your vet anything. Go by all means, go ahead. But don't be surprised if you get a very negative reaction. They're always naturally taught to look for the pharmaceutical solution, and it's interesting. We as human beings are very arrogant that we assume like pharmaceuticals is the solution to chronic illness, right? Whether it's a allergy, whether it's an autoimmune issue, which is, I guess, technically the same thing. In many cases, even mental issues, right? In many cases, it's clear that it is a lack of something, a lack of a mineral, a lack of a vitamin, your body not able to process something. And it's the same with the dogs. So I would strongly suggest that you look into more natural solutions. Pharmaceutical stuff, right? Our modern medicine, I find, is really good for critical issues that are occurring right now. Like you broke your leg or you need heart surgery or something, just keep you alive right now. Like you got a crazy infection, you need antibiotics. That's when we want to use, modern medicine. But for more chronic things, usually what modern medicine is doing is just trying to put a bandage on the symptom without fixing the actual underlying problem, which exists for a reason. Am I Turkish? No, I'm certainly not. My father is Kurdish and my mother is Canadian, so I am a mutt. Any lines like the OG Teeker hooks or Yoshi lines anymore? Yoshi is in many dogs. Yoshi is line bred in many dogs. Teeker hook, I mean, some people like it, and I've seen some dogs from Teeker hook that were okay. But Yoshi Von Dolan, why? Say, man, that dog's in everything. He's in every. It's easy to find him. I think Swamp actually is 5'5" on Yoshi, if I remember correctly. Would you offer a summer internship for a college student? You can email us and we can see. Well, if you're breaking out now, I would say that maybe there's something in your house that is causing this. Maybe there's some cleaner that you're using that is causing this. I would look into that. Uh, okay, guys, I'm trying to wrap this up. How did dogs survive thousands of years ago without human intervention, whereas today they need our full care? Well, if you actually look into that, they did not survive thousands of years ago without human intervention. Dogs have been domesticated for, some say, upwards of 10,000 years or something like this. And dogs literally are a domestic invention of humans, right? Like wild canines are what we would call wolves, coyotes, jackals. Dogs are, uh, selectively bred by us for thousands of years to look a certain way and to act in various ways. Sean says, "Do you travel often? I have a pit bull and I'd love to pay for a session so you can help guide us with your opinion on what type of work he would be best at. Love your videos and your pants. Haha." I appreciate that, Sean. Um, I do. I do. I travel a fair bit actually these days, usually through the continental United States and sometimes through Canada. So, you can hit me up, and if I happen to be heading in a direction that you happen to be in, maybe we can make something happen. I am going to, okay, so guys, I should probably announce this. I am going to be having a seminar more than likely. Stay tuned for this. In November in Florida, there is a seminar. So, those of you in the United States, especially more towards the southern United States, that are looking to train with me, I'm going to have a protection and obedience seminar probably in November. And then there's some other stuff that I might have coming up, but I'm waiting for some confirmations on that. So I'm not going to confirm. I don't like doing too many seminars. So, you know, I don't do too many seminars. I just don't love seminars, to be honest with you, as a format for training and for learning. But I do a few of them. So stay tuned. We'll announce that one in November. It will be in Ocala, Florida. And stay tuned. So. Main refined canine, I see your super chat, but I already answered your question. DDR lines lack extreme drive in general compared to Czech. Actually, both those lines lack extreme drive generally. And, they're often dogs that are these days bred just for an appearance and, to sell to Americans. That's why they breed them. It's not something that, really has a market in Europe for a pretty good reason, right? Veronica. Hi, we used your board and train and your seminar in Ocala. Do you offer personal training for a week or two at your facility to refresh, update my husband's training? We're coming from California. Veronica, yes, we do actually. So if you want to come up and get some private training with the crew up at Shield K9 HQ, by all means, hit us up, send us an email, and we can work something out with you. Trying to find a dog like Manus or Max Van Tiekerhook. Do you know any good kennels? Why? Do you know those dogs? Did you see those dogs work? Or is it just stories? Okay, guys, I'm trying to wrap it up, so I'm just going to look here and see. There's a lot of play on here, so. Okay. All right, guys. Thank you for watching. I hope I answered most of your questions. I know I didn't get all of them. But thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Enjoy your week.